Hello. My name is Roel Garcia. Welcome to the 2026 Faculty Spring Reading Event. Tonight, we will have 6 faculty members read their published works. We'll have poetry, nonfiction, creative nonfiction. The plan is as follows. The readers or the authors will read in alphabetical order according to surname. Okay. We have 5 English department faculty members reading. We have Professors Andrew Collard, myself, Katie Kalish, Gray Lazois, Rachel Ludwig-Diener, and we have Nick Morning from Academic Advising and Occupational Support. Okay. We'll have 3 readers, and then we'll have a 5-minute break. During that break, you're welcome to have snacks and drinks, and some of the authors will have their books for purchase. John Marshall, who is a GRCC music professor, is playing guitar accompaniment, and he'll continue playing. He has some original pieces he created for this event, and this is the first time that the music department and the spring reading have collaborated for this event. After the readings are done, there'll be a Q&A session, so please think of some possible questions to ask the authors. Their background, their writing styles, whatever comes to mind. Okay? So I'd like to leave you with a quote from the great American poet and bard, Walt Whitman. The powerful play goes on, and you may contribute a verse. Tonight, we will contribute many verses. Without further ado, my colleague, Professor Alyssa Jewell.
Good evening. It's great to see all of you here. I have the honor of introducing Andrew Collard. Andrew Collard is the author of Lo-Fi Citadels from Wayne State University Press 2026 and Sprawl from Ohio University Press 2023, winner of the Hollis Summers Poetry Prize and a gold medal in the 2024 Midwest Book Awards. His poems have appeared in Plowshares, Agni, Kenyon Review, and many more journals and magazines. He received a PhD from Western Michigan University and has served as a poetry editor for Witness, Third Coast Magazine, and New Issues Press. He lives with his son in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Please welcome Andrew.
Very nice to meet so many of you. So many of you I've seen on the website or over Zoom or things like that. So hello. Got 2 poems for you here from Lo-Fi Citadels. This is a book which is very much taking after Michigan music. It's a book of love poems, really, and it's really into Motown. That's where this is kind of coming from. Both of these poems are kind of a dance party, if you will. This first one's called Loneliness in the Key of Sprawl. This is a series of obscure dance moves in it. See if you recognize them. I do the pigeon when the chorus hits. Along a sidewalk, modeling the strange shapes weather breaks us into. I do the jogger and the rhododendron, though I know you are by this hour far away. There was a house here, or there could have been, the space hushed as an instrumental passage in the measure of a street racked with expansion. Somewhere the water backing up through a storm drain floods a corridor at rush hour, seeping into the cabins of stranded cars. and the rhythms that have carried us from lot to lot these last months are swallowed. I do the evergreen, though today it seems I have no place in history. I do the earwig and the cul-de-sac, but I receive no indication of response. Before origin, before memory and the thought of home, there are questions that go on without me, the banality of someone deciding what to eat and with whom. Consider how precariously we could live together, you in the bedroom above and me always distracted with the idea of coming up. We could learn at last the dryer vent and the elusive junk mail. We could scare the neighbors all week long, inventing new, unmanageable steps as the daylilies stashed behind the garage explode through a season's worth of grasping vines and branches. Thank you. I'm really chuffed about this music. Thank you, John.
Good job.
It's very cool. Yeah, good job. It's like an improvisatory band up here, kind of. This poem is called Shaboom, after the old song by the Chords. It's do 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 do. Yeah. This is famous everywhere amongst children because it is in the film Cars, the Pixar film Cars. And so anyway, this is a song for my son. Shaboom. Once I'm moving, the moving gets easier. I kick my heels out into the space around me, the life-size monster ghost I am, the skeleton bobbing over carpet fiber, bathroom tile, arms circulating because it seems like they're supposed to. He won't remember this, my son, babbling his Matchbox epic by the couch, inflections of speech, although the doctor says his language is coming late. Shaboom, the track shuffles over the speaker. He knows it from a film. He puts his hands up. Do, 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 do. I sweep him into the air above me, and for now, my knees, the bad spaces between bones, shuttle all of me just fine. Shoulders in the game too, doing work that won't show up in the stat sheet. This is the process, our daily ritual. He grabs tight to my chest, for now he fits there, and we fall into a glide unthinking, past the plaster crumbling at the window, boxes in the closet I never did unpack. Inside me is a liver that isn't too sick yet, and inside him a heart that is still growing. This is our national anthem, our call and response, the air conditioner beginning to soften the wall, obviously patched, our books scattered before the table. Shaboom, I am always awakening and always here. The music a door back to my senses, the body a door back to my world. Let's say there was a song, dear reader, that changed everything, a current of sound you stumbled on as if it had been waiting for your notice. Where were you when you heard it? What did it feel like when the word came down?
Thank you so much, Andrew. Next up, we have Roel Garcia. Roel Garcia is an assistant professor of English at Grand Rapids Community College, where he has taught since 2009. Roel teaches composition and poetry classes. He grew up in South Texas, where many of his short stories take place. His short story, 75 Pebbles, was accepted by the Ball State University publication, The Broken Plate. Please welcome Roel.
Thank you. Alyssa Jewell will read for me, obviously, because of my vision disability, but I'll give a little bit of an intro. It's a true story. Again, I was like 8 years old at my abuelita's house in the ranch where I grew up. I had this big anxiety when I was a kid of my parents dying in a car crash. And so whenever they went out alone without the kids, it kind of scared me, it freaked me out. So I in this particular story, it's true. I was sitting outside my abuelita's house at the ranch, which is right next door to my house, and I was just kind of staring down the Caliche Road, just waiting to see when they'd show up. And of course, the longer it took, the more my anxiety grew and grew and grew, until I finally had this little pebble in my hand. And the little pebble in my hand sort of gave me an idea of like, what could I do so that I could will them not to die in this car crash, as irrational as that seems, that I had that much power. But that's kind of how it started, and then I wrote this story, and Alyssa is going to read most of the story for you.
"75 pebbles. Abuelita, how old are my parents?" She looked perplexed. Then she answered my question. Dad was 39 and Mom was 36. "Gracias, Abuelita," I said, and turned back to face the road. It was a minute before the door closed, and my grandmother went back inside. 39 and 36, I thought. They were old, but Abuelita was much older, and Pempo was old when he died 4 years before. My parents had much longer to live before they died. Surely I would be at least 50 years old before my parents died. I continued to roll the pebble between my fingers, then I looked at it, then looked over at the side of the porch where more pebbles protruded. My eyes widened. I had an idea, something that would keep my parents safe while they were gone. I would pull out a pebble for each year of their life. I sat up and thought about it. How many pebbles would I have to remove from the porch? I started with 39 and added 36, 75. Math was not my best subject, so I added it again with my fingers. I came up with 75 again. I looked over at the concrete side of the porch. There were lots of pebbles. Surely I could pull out that many. I put the pebble I had in my hand on the porch steps. I walked over to the concrete side of the porch and ran my hand over the rough surface. First, only 2 or 3 pebbles fell away. Then 2 or 3 more. Soon, more pebbles, too many to count, fell away. I stopped running my hand over the surface and picked up the pebbles off the ground. I went over to the steps, started plucking the pebbles out of my hand, and then counted as I laid them on the steps. When I removed the final pebble from my hand, I counted 17. I ran back and brushed my hand over the rough surface again. More pebbles fell away. I looked at my hand. The skin on the fingers and palm was scratched up, but it wasn't bleeding. It looked as if I'd run the hand over sandpaper. Undeterred, I picked up the pebbles and headed over to the porch. After laying all of them next to the rest already on the porch, the total was 30 pebbles. I smiled. It would be okay. I would reach 75 pebbles. I went back to retrieve more pebbles. This time I used my left hand. My right hand was getting pretty roughed up. I looked for another section of porch wall, one that would render more pebbles. After a quick search, I rolled my hand over the surface. Lots of pebbles came off. Back at the porch steps, I counted the pebbles, 44. I continued the process, going back and forth, until I'd reached 66 pebbles. The pebbles were lined up in neat rows on the second step of the porch. The palms of both hands were getting raw, but I was almost there. Looking around the yard, I noticed the shadows had grown darker, the sky was turning a deep purple, and stars were visible. I looked over at the road. Nothing yet. It was okay. I was almost done. I was stuck at 66, but I felt confident I'd finish. I just had to finish. I went over to the wall. I looked at it and thought I could pick off individual pebbles. I reached out for one large pebble. It took a few seconds, but I pried it loose, 8 more to go. I walked up and down the concrete wall, feeling around, plucking pebbles. Some came loose and others remained stuck. Finally, I counted 7 more pebbles. I needed 1 more. For a second, I panicked that I'd plucked all of the pebbles from the wall. Since it was getting darker, it was difficult to see them. I ran my hand throughout the surface. Panic set in. Finally, I found one. I began prying it loose. My thumb and forefinger worked and worked. my heart raced. Then, when I thought all hope was lost, the pebble came loose. Relief crept over me. I ran over to the porch steps and set down the remaining pebbles. 75. I reached the magic number. My parents would be safe now. My body loosened up and I relaxed. I looked up as the screen door opened. My aunt was there looking at me. I was playing, I said. Es tiempo para tu baño, she said. I nodded. I was hungry, but I knew I'd lost out on eating tortillas, and now I had to bathe. I started up the porch steps when I heard a car engine behind me. I looked back and waited. The sound grew louder, and then I saw headlights. It was my parents. I ran back down the steps and down the walk to the front gate. They drove up to my grandmother's house, and I raced to the car as my mother opened the car door. I gave her a hug. Calm down, mijo, she said. You're safe, I said in a muffled voice. My arms were wrapped around her, and she did not hear what I said. Did you take a bath? She asked me. I told her I was about to. My dad got out of the car, and I held both their hands as they entered through the gate. We went up the walk together and up the steps. ¿Qué es esto? My dad said, looking down at the pebbles. I was just playing, I said, squeezing his hand tighter. My parents were safe that day, and for many days, months, and years afterward. I wouldn't lose my father to cancer until he turned 66. I was only 36 when he died. I was a kid then, and I knew nothing of cancer. All I knew that day was my parents were safe. I had saved them. The 75 pebbles had saved them. Thanks, Roel. All right, and now I have the honor of introducing Professor Katie Kalish. Katie Kalish is the author of Quiet Woman, a finalist for the 2018 Main Street Rag Poetry Book Award, and Flu Season, published in 2025 by Cornerstone Press. She is the recipient of a 2023 Elizabeth George Foundation grant, and her poems have been nominated for the Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net. She teaches composition and creative writing here at GRCC. Please welcome Katie.
Thank you all for being here, and thank you, Alyssa and Roel, for all your work putting this together. And thank you, Jonathan. I am reading 4 poems from my book called Flu Season. Not the most happy title, but it's a collection that started before COVID. There are some COVID poems, but it was not inspired by COVID, the collection as a whole. Mostly it meditates on dread and what I see as its opposite, which is longing. So that's probably what you'll hear in some of these poems. I also tried to choose some spring poems. The first one is called What Rises. The sun, ever earlier and earlier, a bluebird's orange belly to the feeder, a robin beak with a worm, spikes of iris, a heron from the mist off the river, flags on mailboxes up and down the street, steam from our pot of oatmeal, the May wood pile with ash and cottonwood, welt of poison ivy on my ankle, muscari in the lawn, and dandelions, rhubarb stalks, purple heads of asparagus, a second chicken coop the neighbors erect and paint blue, Theodore the chipmunk to the deck railing for orange peels and apple cores, the dog's rear end in a yoga pose, my rear end in a yoga pose, my son into a Norway spruce, the river to meet the bank, masks to overtake faces, the death toll, and at last the white moon surrendering. Thank you. This next poem is an Ars Poetica, so it's actually about filleting a trout that has already been fried in a pan, which is how my family taught me to do it. We cleaned it, but the head and everything was on when we cooked it. I've learned since that's not necessarily how other people do it. So sorry if that grosses you out. But as I was writing this, it was very much like how I think about putting a poem together. So that's what I mean by Ars Poetica. Filleting a fried trout. At the base of the tail, slip the last tine of your fork beneath the speckled skin, crispy now, and then slit it toward the head to peel back the skin. See the white meat in small, neat trapezoids. Take the fork, use the tool, look at the fish on its plate, perpendicular to your own face. Gently, gently, press the fork tines into the fillet's center line, inviting the meat away from the bones. Then the other side. All this for the reward of the spine. Lift the delicate tail like a petal, like lace. Carefully, carefully. Just enough so that each fine fish bone slips singularly away from the bottom fillet. Now you have a small skeleton, something that looks to belong in a natural history museum, not your trash can. Hold it up. See the beauty in the symmetry of the bones, even in the spaces between the bones, in the way it all holds together after being caught and cooked and picked clean. Candy cigarettes. 1, I learned to smoke from candy cigarettes, how to play baseball from Big League Chew and Fun Dip. I practiced getting married with ring pops and bartending with Verners. I grew up next door to the Manistee National Forest and down the road from a gas station that kept a black bear in a cage for customers. This is a true story. So you could stay longer, they served Blue Moon ice cream from a walk-up window. It was called Thirsties, and it's still open, selling gas and liquor, lotto tickets. 2, lately my children get $20 and sugar cookies every few months for donating their blood to science because a company dumped waterproofing chemicals nearby. They test and retest our well, our blood, for the toxic plume of PFAS. Each month we receive 8 plastic barrels of water, light blue and gurgling. I thought I chose an idyllic home for my sweet children on a small river with a large yard and plenty of wild animals, native plants, owls and herons nesting nearby, and snapping turtles. 3, now the language is all that's beautiful. The hand gestures the EPA workers use on the local news are a dance. Legalese is multisyllabic and filled with liquid consonants, high-frequency vowel sounds. Like decay, it dresses up in sugar and sparkles. 4, Samantha, the bear, died, and they finally removed her chain link cage. Later, the state cut bear hunting licenses. Since then, the black bear population has grown by 88%, which sounds good. There are signs for 7 miles on that stretch of road that borders the national forest, warning drivers of bear crossings. But semis still collide with one every now and then. It doesn't even make a headline. This last poem is called Osteobiography, and it was an idea from the Smithsonian Magazine. What story do your bones tell about you? So this is my attempt. And I wrote this a while ago, so I'm no longer this age, as you can probably guess. Female, aged 40, middle class, based on calcium and bone density. Coxal bone and eye sockets reveal shyness, timidity. Gardener's patellas likely well-oiled, but still cracking each time they squat. Phalanges show pre-arthritis, nimble fingers that might have peeled away nails, candle wax, dried pancake batter on counters or breakfast tables. Left ring metacarpal is smaller, shows signs of long marriage. Jawbone has a propensity not for grinding, but clenching, holding on to things, which corroborates the knuckles wear. The adult teeth appear older than they are, so serious. 24 elastic ribs and unusual grooves in the radius and ulna, perhaps remnants of carrying something like firewood. Sternum still warm and pink. Cranium ringed like the inside of a tree, lined by thoughts that etched themselves into circular patterns. Smooth metatarsals of a walker, not a runner. Hips that orbited out with children, 3, perhaps 4, perhaps more. No breaks anywhere, not even the remains of a hairline fracture. So pretty cautious, possibly even paranoid. Thank you.
Thank you for that beautiful reading, Katie. We'll take a 5-minute break. Please enjoy the snacks in the back and also check out the author's books in the back as well over here. All right, welcome back from our break. And next up, we have Gray LaJoie. Originally from Western North Carolina, Gray Wolf LaJoie teaches English composition at GRCC. Previously, they worked with the Alabama Prison Arts and Education Program. Their writing has appeared in the Three Penny Review, Shenandoah, Copper Nickel, Swamp Pink, formerly known as Crazy Horse, and Bellevue Literary Review, and selections from their debut fiction collection, Little Ones, from Hub City Press 2024, have been awarded the Pushcart Prize and the O. Henry Prize, selected by Lauren Groff. Please welcome Gray.
Hi, guys. Thank you, Roel and Alyssa, for putting this together. This is awesome. Thank you to all these amazing readers. I'm really glad to be reading here with you. I had a piece that was really upbeat, and it was just a little too long. So unfortunately, I'm going to read something much more depressing. So, yeah. I write a lot about animals and animal perspectives. So this is one of those stories, centers around an animal. Contested territory. The mule did not understand any of it. It did not understand its preliminary trainings, nor the remote military depot where such things had taken place. It was only an animal, a tender young fowl, and it did not understand the urgency with which its handlers spoke to one another, nor to it. It did not understand the shouts and the strikes and the feed that were administered without apparent pattern, sometimes by strangers and sometimes by those well known. It did not understand the needlessly elaborate maneuvering they coaxed it through beneath the heavy Oklahoma sun, the dry and desperate fields through which so tortuously they walked it. The handlers supposed, on account of its resistance to their prods, on account of the mule's stubborn nature, that the mule was not a sensitive creature. They were mistaken, of course. But for their purposes, they did not need this insight. Soon enough, the mule would be dispatched. And when this happened, there was still more left for it to wonder at. Still more it could not understand. That heavy storm of steel, the train into which it was loaded. Riding in the dark train car, it did not understand the brutal churning of those wheel sets and their coupling rods, the despairing gasps that the train's engine gave again and again. The mule did not understand such a thing as the Gulf Coast, did not understand either the violent speed with which it moved toward this. And certainly it did not understand the vast and looming freight ship which at last it was delivered to, a vessel at times referred to as the floating barn, designed long ago for the transport of such animals. The vessel carried 3 months of fodder. On board, it had veterinarians and handlers to oversee the animal's safe passage. Once on board, the mule was taken to the hold below deck and packed, along with hundreds of other mules, into dedicated stalls. The mule could not understand the sickly swaying of the deck beneath its legs, the way the ground rose up and fell, how haplessly this tossed it back and forth against the confines of its stall each day. Many of the animals on board suffered concussions, bruises, broken bones. Without seeing them, the mule could hear their worried braying from its dark enclosure, their desperate cries. Many more died from sickness or from injury, their smell haunting the hold until they were dragged away and their bodies thrown into the sea. The mule did not understand any of this. It did not understand the austere human beings who came near to it each day. Their bizarre and maniacal motivations could never be known and seemed from hour to hour to be changing. At times, they fed the mule generously, stroking its mane and speaking to it softly. At other times, they lashed it without reason, without any goal in mind, kicking at its stall. All the while, the mule understood none of this. The mule did not understand war, did not understand the way men moved so exhaustively against one another. This the mule could never understand, yet it would come in time to be familiar with it. It would learn the all-consuming firelight, the vast cacophonies of murder, the blood pooling thick as a mud at its feet. Of its own origins, even, the mule did not understand. Where had it been before its training? Who were its parents, its kin? Even its birth would seem to be a baffle, a puzzling manipulation from some unseen force. For the other mules, the many other mules who panted desperately around it, even for them it felt no recognition, no want. To all it looked upon, it seemed a stranger. After so many months, the freighter arrived at its destination, and the mule was offloaded. It was hungry by then, undernourished, and its muscles ached profoundly. At the loading site, there was no dock. The site, they said, was undeveloped. And so the vessel was steered as close to the shore as it could come. Then, using mechanical winches, they lowered the mule down the side of the ship until it hung just over the waterline and dropped it in. From there, the mule had no choice but to swim, traversing the short distance to the beach, working instinctively toward land and away from certain death. It did not understand the Indian Ocean, of course, but it knew what to do, and only moments later it was standing in the bitter-smelling sand, gazing up at the freighter without any recognition that this massive machine had been the one to deliver it to this place. The mule had no way of knowing how improbable its survival on the voyage had been, how often it happened that such a ship went down, taking with it hundreds of animal lives which were its cargo. The mule stood on the beach and watched as one after another animal was offloaded in the same manner, swimming desperately onto that strange beachhead. The mule did not understand what a quartermaster was. It did not know anything of brigadier generals, of battalions. It did not know allies or axes. It had no way of comprehending all the many miles that had been taken from Oklahoma to Louisiana to South Africa to Burma. And perhaps most importantly of all, once dispatched, the mule did not understand what it was carrying. It did not understand when it hauled upon its back medical packs or rations or ammunition, desperately needed supplies which only it could manage through the rocky summits. It did not understand the capabilities of the M2 Browning heavy machine gun nor the howitzer M1 artillery, which clattered against one another on its back as it traveled. The mule had no means of understanding where the men were leading it. It did not understand why, to keep it quiet, they had cut its vocal cords. It did not understand even that they had been cut. It only knew the pain and then the silence. It did not understand the importance of being silent in some places. It did not understand yet that such a place existed as contested territory. Nonetheless, the mule proved quite ideal, even essential, at carrying supplies through the rough terrain. Moving deftly through the Asian jungles, it trod with hundreds of other mules, as well as dozens of men in their rattling gear, their radios and their rifles, through the feral maze of vegetation. The thick joints at the mule's legs swelled as though just about to burst, ached grievously under the heavy load. After a time, once its ration of grain had been depleted, the mule ate bamboo and banana leaves, then carried onward. Heavy rain fell. Without knowing it, the mule's damp silver fur shone brilliantly, miraculously, in the pale moonlight, for anyone who saw. The earth where it stepped turned to mud and sank wearily beneath it, but it went on. When the line broke and gunfire began falling all around them, it seemed no different from the rain. The mule did not understand what had happened. It did not understand how a great tree could burst just like a blister, could itself become a bomb, unleashing clouds of splinters, deadly shards. It did not understand why the other animals began one by one to lie down in the mud, becoming useful only as barricades, absorbing round after round of ammunition as terrified young men lay just behind them with their eyes closed, praying. It did not understand prayer, nor any other human noise, nor the cruel and cunning shells erupting just behind it, nor the bullets flitting back and forth. Only when it seemed to have become the last animal left standing, after the noise had decreased and its pack had been unloaded, and once they'd heaved a bleeding soldier up onto the mule's drenched back, as the man went on wheezing, his face right next to the mule's ear, writhing and whimpering just as one fresh from the litter. Only then could the mule come by some understanding, some sense of the place it now found itself. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Gray. Next up is Rachel Lutwig-Diener. Rachel Lutwig-Diener enjoys a bookish life. She has earned degrees from Colgate University, North Carolina State University, and Queen's University of Charlotte. Currently, Rachel teaches writing and literature at Grand Rapids Community College. Rachel's recent publications can be found at Streetlight Magazine and Harpy Hybrid Review. Rachel's essay, Nursing Mother, was selected for the 2024 Story Sanctum Editor's Choice Award for Best Nonfiction. Please welcome Rachel.
Good evening. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, especially this table of my soul sisters over here and my beautiful daughter, the most magical creature, who will be 23 on Monday. Thanks for coming out, hon. This piece was originally published in Streetlight Magazine this past summer. And those of you who know me just a little bit know that I'm not from Grand Rapids. And listening to this piece, you'll learn a little bit more about where I am from. It's not a Madeleine, but I have always been sensitive to smells and tastes, but this was too much. On a 4-day getaway with my husband in NYC, the city of my girlhood, I sat down to a sesame bagel with scallion cream cheese. I took the first bite, soft, chewy, crispy, nutty, tangy, sharp. I burst into tears. Covering my face with my hands, my sobs alternated with laughing, shock, shame. To be so flooded with memories at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning in Midtown. Fresh bagels were the central experience of my childhood. At least once a week, usually on the weekends, my dad would roll out of bed or return from a late night at the hospital with a bag of bagels. I would eat those bagels untoasted. Who needs to toast when the bagels are already hot from the oven? Smeared with veggie cream cheese, draped with Nova, or with the creamed onions from Pickled Lox, the bagels of my girlhood were not yet adulterated with jalapeno, assaggio, chocolate chips, or a rainbow of food coloring. Cinnamon raisin was a radical statement. My childhood memories center around my parents' round butcher block table, the surface sticky from the Long Island humidity, the walls hung with fruited wallpaper, a change from the original 1960s geometric mirrors, even on the ceiling, held the busy home phone, its back curved like a sleeping infant. Clad in my flannel nightgown, tucked into a wicker chair pushed back against the wall, the floorboard heating tick, tick, ticking against a winter chill, I would join my siblings for a Saturday morning bagel. Even 40 years later, I see the white of our dairy dishes, the drops of orange juice splashed onto the woven placemats, the cut up fruit or onion or occasional tomato. My parents rushing about. There were 4 of us children in the house. I don't remember seeing either of them sit down. My siblings and I would squabble, fight over the comic section in Newsday. Someone would inevitably stomp away from the table up the short stairway of the split level, slamming a bedroom door. Satiated with bagels, I might drift upstairs for homework, my little sister downstairs to watch Muppet Babies. Birthdays and holidays like Mother's Day and Father's Day were celebrated over bagels. From Bagel Boss or Bagel Bob's or any of the other many bagel spots in town. My grandparents might drive out from Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, to join us for bagels. Maybe my aunt and uncle and cousins would join us too, picking up a box of cookies or a cheese fluff from Wall's Bakery on Broadway. Rosh Chodesh at Hewlett East Rockaway Jewish Center Religious School, under the enthusiastic guidance of Principal Mordechai Mafuda, involved a monthly bagel celebration. At the end of a 2-hour class on Sunday, another 2-hour session on Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday, someone would stop by the classroom with a large brown bag of hot bagels. There were paper plates and napkins, and the choices were Temptee cream cheese, or even better, Breakstone's whipped salted butter. A smear of salted butter on a salted bagel, no Midwestern cinnamon roll can compete. The faces of my Hebrew school classmates are a blur. I remember some of their English names: Lisa Sklar, Danny Epstein. Could there have been 2 Danny Epsteins or just 2 Dannys? And I remember some of their Hebrew names: Shmuel, Shlomo, Leah, Daniel, David. But the bagels I remember with crystal clarity. The pull, the chew, the litter of everything seasoning in your lap, Writing about them, I can feel the damp heat of the paper bag, the saliva collecting in my mouth in anticipation of the reward, earned only because it was a new month. Living in the Jewish diaspora of the Midwest for almost 20 years, I have forgotten what a real bagel is about. Sure, I would let Evelyn, my grad school bestie, coax me to Brugger's during our office hours where we would swill hazelnut creme coffees and get bagels with butter. And I have even sunk to the level of buying Lender's bagels or the store brand. There have even been a few places in GR that purport to have real bagels. GR Bagels, Bagel Kitchen, Terra Bagels. Yes, you have filled a bagel-shaped hole in my heart, but after visiting New York, I'm sorry, these circles of dough hold no power for me. Part of the issue is that none of these places do enough volume to serve up truly fresh hot bagels. I sometimes wonder if the bagels I'm eating are from the day before and not just hours old. My preference for fresh hot bagels reminds me that perhaps all of our bread should be eaten fresh, that living in this processed world of cold, old bread sitting in plastic on our grocery shelves has shifted my gaze from the truest form of carbohydrate love, the fresh hot bagel. The hustle of adult life lifts the veil on the magic of childhood. Void of my father's good humor, I don't want to wake up any earlier than I do on a Saturday or Sunday. For whom would I roll out of bed to fetch the bagels? 2 of my 3 children have moved out. My 3rd child at 16 is in the I'm not hungry for breakfast phase of life. My husband would prefer grape nuts. When I took a bite of the bagel at New York Bagel and Coffee, I was flooded with a million memories of bagels past. It was a version of Rachel Lutwick, This Is Your Life. And this year I have been married to my husband for 26 years. I have lived away from my childhood home for 32 years. Eating that bagel was a flashback to the life I had before I went to college, to grad school, got married, became a mother. I was me, but not me. I miss that girl, all her potential, and I miss the bagels. Thank you.
Thank you for that beautiful reading, Rachel. And last but not least, we have Nick Morning. Nick Morning's background includes teaching English, poetry, and performance studies in several Michigan secondary public schools, a 2-year position as the editor-in-chief of the national undergraduate journal, The Albion Review, and curating the IPSY performance series, Electric Ocean Strip Search. Nick received his MA in creative writing at Eastern Michigan University and has spent his most recent years in higher education as a success coach and academic advisor. Past work is published in Cellar Roots, the Garfield Lake Review, Neat Magazine, and Grand Rapids Dyer Ives Poetry Competition. Please welcome Nick.
There is a lot of talent in this room, and I want to thank all of you for having me. Happy opening day. My toenails are colored orange and blue for our tigers. The piece that I'm going to share tonight is something that I've returned to since my graduate studies. It was part of a one-man performance piece that I wrote for my master's thesis. It's a story about my family, and it's a story about immigration. This much is true. The name Uni pushes passage west towards the Atlantic from an eastward direction. Guardia Lombardi, Italy. Olive corner village pits hills and rest high in mountains, mass sky and charcoal wire branches and chestnut fingers. Volcano forests line the Anasando Valley, and a couple thousand paths from home beg the horse-drawn wagon out of the province Campania. This is an exodus. This is reclamation. This is a continuous breath, except when it's a bow-shuddering groan, a ship in constipation. But out by boat, my great-grandfather Amadio, and later on Amadio's brother Peter, and more sisters, a couple cousins, and then his son, my grandfather Matthew. My family is Pinus pinea, native beyond its natural borders, and replanted in Michigan. Uni sprouts in a stranger's mispronunciation. A pencil scratch revises continental ranges, and two roots stalk generations. Matthew and my grandmother, Teresa Dragonetti. Their love settles in a family-run grocery store on Summit Avenue. And only a few years later, more bodies born in Jackson. 3 children, 2 sisters and a brother, Mariana, Andrew, and my mother, Julianne. Iuni becomes a forest where the bark thickens in the middle with the weight of beginnings, second chances. I am just an extension of their decision, their deeply fissured DNA and broad brown vertical plates, cut and pulverized and pressed into paper. This much is true. When I approach the voice from the outside, I am the hand-hugged hole we hide the little bambini in for protection. I am the fingernail soil. The worms swim up my piss and darkness. Without rain or fear, I elbow the wall and close my eyes, listen for whiskey and rifle silence. My father smothers my brother with his hat, shortens his breath to a tremor seen only by dust and shadows. I am the runaway. Sometimes I wake up in the crowded ship, belly to back to bowels with others speaking in stares. An older woman whose soft scarf is both our sail and our wind. It encompasses our direction and distills the diarrhea. I am home in our brain, not in the blessed mess of longed-for letters and vernacular vomit. I believe the facts are hitting history against the waves. To be now, we dug trenches, sucked coal, trained canaries, sold fruits and vegetables, shined shoes, pooled our sweat to drink again and again, floated on thirst from shore to shore, dock to lock, lock to dock. We wore dead man's waterlogged shoes. We irrigated the proper channels. What new world hand checks these boxes, approves our inside voices, disconfirms our scurvy? Ellis captured our name and then lost it among Carrillo, Carabino, Canto, McNulty, Bernardo, Jaworski, Schneider, and O'Malley? Listen to Ricketts and Lance, our pus sores. Count bed bugs and cut off our gangrene fingers. Check for accent and mannerisms. Mistake our confusion for sinister. Translate our hope into shame. Well, who speaks for you? For us? We speak for us. The filth, the ship, the days, the shame. Can we speak for the bodies in the middle that could not keep the promise? Promise? What promise? We secreted our names into the line. We swore to wait for the past, to wait for the pass, and then meet the others outside the iron fence, where the concrete curfewed grass, where we became Iuni. It's becoming difficult to hear you. For you who speaks. Who is how we speak together. Amadio, Peter, Angelina, Teresa, Dragonetti, Capercio, Jankos, Philomena. Like you, we were always hot-tempered, except when we are not. Well, when are you not? When we raised 3 children on 3 jobs for 67 years in 3 homes, Summit Street, Francis, and Southwest Avenue, Andy, Nina, Julianne. We shared Scherzi and Fiaba. We picked gooseberries and peaches, piggybacked brothers, and broke arms in 2 places. What is a man? A man who did what had to happen when so true would do, when clarity would not do. Who did what had to happen when so few would do, when our histories would not do. Who occupied a space in the middle of Italy and America, macaronis, cannolis, eggs with ketchup. Who knew who would be so far away when the mouth nights up and the sun goes down? How your body will find our requests confusing and not know how to proceed. Well, how much is true? This much is true. When it so happens I am sick of men who walk into certain corners, their heat stretched out, shivered in grief, so much sleep beat on moist wounded tomb, root and shame cement. I smell in steps the no more stores lament, and no more goods, but still gardens, no meat on these warm bones. I hear the coffee bent as cracks in skin. Still I could be waterproofs that whisper under power lines, where an Italian mother hung clothes from roof to roof, line to line, or guts besides the past in shirts and skirts, and hope aloof in prayer or strolls for our godly designs. Of all this nothing one wears like a body. This garment that fades, that phrase, that ravels under the unabrading fingernails of years. The minds have gone out. This perforated, cranky mind of all these hours one chases after to turn them into mirrors, and nothing remains except possibly walks or maps made by memories, superimposed on myths, or the happening all at once and never again. This much is true. What cannot be said in the gaps or the streets as much as trees, branches, boats, fish. All these lights from morning to night to morning. Thank you.
Thank you to all the readers and the authors. That was just so awesome. The creativity is amazing. So now it's time for that Q&A session. Who has a question for any of the authors? Alyssa has the mic, and she will be happy to walk. If you raise your hand, any question for anybody, please.
Hi, Gray. I really liked your story. I was wondering, what other animal perspectives have you written about in the past? And just could you tell us a little more about what drew you to writing from their perspective?
Thank you for that. I've written a lot of mammal perspectives. I'm anxious about going beyond that because I feel like I might stretch, the limits of my anthropocentric thinking. But the why, I think I just really enjoy. I think that for me, the heart of fiction has everything to do with empathy, and empathy for very disparate positionalities. So animals feel like, a particularly worthy and challenging sort of perspective to try and target. Dogs are really fun. I love writing from dog perspectives. That's one I do a lot. I've got a gorilla, a whale, but I haven't gone beyond. Well, I do have some stories about insects, but they're more cartoony. They're not like actually honest attempts to get at that. But thank you.
Thank you, Gray. Who else has a question?
So Katie, this one's for you. I just read an article that said that when we're angry, if we write down what we're angry about and then actively throw it in the trash can or burn it, that it decreases our anger. But if we write it down and don't throw it away, it does not increase our anger. So my question for you is, do you think writing about anxiety mitigates it? Does it minimize it? Does it keep it steady? Does it grow it to examine it so closely? So I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay, for the question. Is it that obvious? I mean, what do you mean, write about anxiety? I guess it makes me more aware of it, I think. And I think you have to like notice it, right, to be able to like let it go. I sort of feel like I tend to like nurture it more than let it go. And that I think comes from a bunch of different things, you know, genetic, familial models and right, everything else in the world today. Yeah, but I do think that writing about it at least makes me aware of it, and it gives me more of a choice over it, maybe. How much time to give to it, all that kind of stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Anyone else?
I just had a question for Nick, because it sounded like you had stuck with this piece for a while and you kept coming back to it. I was just curious, how would one, basically, how do you keep coming back to a piece and be able to add on to it and be able to re-enter that mindset and basically work with a piece past the initial time? Because it's hard for me to imagine sitting down to write a piece and then like even a couple months later coming back to the same piece. So I was just wondering how you did that.
Thank you. That's a great question. You know, I would say that, like families, I have a very kind of difficult relationship with our history, and I found that as I got older, I wanted to preserve that history, you know, in a sense. But I also found that it was exhausting to engage in the type of what we would call autoethnography type of work that I'm doing. And so, you know, there was a good 5-6 years where after I finished the piece that I just kind of put it away and was like, this, no, you know, this is all I can handle. But, you know, I got into my 40s, and then I started to realize that, you know, family, they get older, you start to lose family members. And so it was important for me to, I think, come back to it, re-enter into it in a different headspace. And I was worried that I would maybe find myself very disappointed in myself or maybe my writing. And for once, I was a little bit forgiving of myself and was like, you know, we can get back into this. We can do this again, you know. So, but yeah, that's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is for the poets, and this may come as a surprising question or not. I'm just wondering if punctuation plays a role in your poetry, and if so, how do you make that decision?
I know Andrew has an answer. Okay.
I got the canned response to this because my favorite writer is Muriel Rukeyser. She says that punctuation is biological, which what she means by that is that language comes from our bodies, our experiences. And so the way that you punctuate a poem actually can be like deeply personal. And yeah, obviously it has different effects, but that's been my sort of guiding light.
Katie, do you want to speak to punctuation?
What role does punctuation play in your poetry? Or do you use
I mean, I use it. I don't want to lose my job here, Megan. Yes, I use punctuation. Jason's staring at me like, no, I use it. But for me, I guess I hadn't realized this, but I think when I hear punctuation, it's like about like organizing, the structure. And for me, that's more like line breaks. Like when I go to a reading like this, I so want to see, for the poets, I just want to see it on the page. I actually went to one reading where the poet passed out copies of the poem. And I was like, this is what I'm talking about. I should have done that. So for me, I guess, I think like where the line stops, it's maybe it's a form of punctuation, those line breaks. And that's what I play around with more and think about using more than punctuation.
Jason Schneiderman, the poet, says that line breaks are a form of punctuation.
This question is for Rachel. I'll lead with the question and then I'll back up and say why. The question is, does writing connect you to your extended family? So one of the things I really heard in your piece was the nostalgia, the love, the savoring the memories of not only the bagel, but also those Saturday mornings when your family would gather and your extended family would even gather, and maybe even knowing the baker and being part of the diaspora here where you may be farther from family, is writing a way that you bake something that you can share with family across the miles?
That's such a good question, and I would say like absolutely yes. Although that's usually like something that I think about afterwards. I mean, one of the things that we tell our students is that you learn what you think or how you understand something by writing about it. And like when I burst into tears at New York Bagel and Coffee, I was like, wow, that was like, it was really intense. It was like, I might have thought twice about going to New York because I was like so flooded with memories almost the whole time. And I mean, it's not that I wouldn't go back there. I wasn't prepared for how intense it was. And I mean, they say like that taste memories and smell memories are some of the strongest memories that we have. And so I wanted to interrogate that moment of like, what was that about? And I just kind of followed it. And it was interesting, after my mom read it, she said to my younger sister, who's like she would call herself the black sheep. I don't think she's that much the black sheep, like the gray sheep of the family. She said about my sister, see, her childhood wasn't that bad. Why doesn't she remember things the way that you remember them? But I also think like, I know that there are certain pieces that I've written and I think of it as sort of like sort of like a gift that I'm handing it to people. And I'm like, I don't know, Nick, if maybe you might feel this a little bit with like your family members who are still around, that it's kind of like, this is how our family story has crystallized in some way, And so like it becomes this object where you can say like, so here, like it didn't mean nothing. Good question, Linz.
I think we have time for one more. Anyone else have a question? Okay.
I have a question for Jonathan. So when they asked us about having guitar, I couldn't conceive of the guitar over top of the mule, and as soon as I heard the guitar, I was full of regret and very jealous. But I was curious because I think of writing, especially poetry, but writing in general, as such a musical and sonic event that feels so much like the heart of it. I know that you had the pieces of writing to prepare in advance, but hearing the readers read the work, hearing the actual voices, the cadence, and pacing, I wonder how much improvisation or adaptation you felt you had to do in response to that? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, so newsflash, most of that was improvised.
Nice.
So I just first want to say all of your work was excellent, and I really appreciated how you read it. So I could tell that many of you had to practice before you read your poems and your stories. So am I right in that thinking? Good. So as far as listening to the composers read their poems and stuff, I had to totally change everything. Like I had an idea and I was like, no, this isn't working. So it just kind of happened. Yeah.
Well, it was great. Thank you.
Thank you for all the great questions. And I guess this concludes the Q&A and the event. So the thank yous. Thank you for everybody for being here. Thank you for all of the authors. Wonderful pieces, very creative, beautiful, very beautiful. I'd like to thank Professor Jewell, Professor Ursulada Muhammad, and myself. I'd like to thank the GRCC English Department. John, great job, man. Accompanying the readings. Potatoes Catering, the GRCC Media Department. A special thanks to Leanne Shala and the Transfer Bridges Program and the Mellon Foundation for supporting the event. And thank you all for being here. It really means a lot to us that you're here to support the creative accomplishments of our faculty. So have a good night, and hopefully we'll see you again next year. Thank you.